Welcome, Greg Caridi.
I remember telling Label all these years ago, I'm a Catholic kid, so a lot of the stuff that we were playing around with, I had really no idea where that came from. I was never a 7-year-old Jewish kid growing up, although I'm sure at times I've been a clumsy idiot like Clarence, so at least I could pull that and put it into what we were doing there.
Won't you come and join us? Oh, great, a podcast. Shh, we're about to start.
All right. Here we go. All right, here we are with the legendary Greg Caridi, who is also known as the dim-witted sidekick of Jewish entertainment.
You must be Clarence.
How do you know?
I've been informed that Uncle Evo has a dim-witted sidekick.
Welcome, Greg Caridi. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. Thank God. So, what are you doing nowadays? Now that's Agent Emes has been 10 years ago, but what are you doing nowadays?
Has it been that long? I was trying to figure out earlier this afternoon when all of that started, and I think that might be close to 20 some years ago.
Yeah, 2003. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that sounds about right. Currently, I work in a hotel in downtown Pittsburgh. I had done hotel work for some years, got sidetracked at a Catholic church and a Catholic parish here in Pittsburgh, but now I am back in hotels.
All right, so I guess let's start from your childhood. That kind of defines what you are nowadays a little bit.
Blame it on my childhood then, huh?
But there's always something that would define you, that you could think of, your background, how you grew up.
Well, I was very lucky. I have 3 brothers, 2 older, 1 younger, and all 4 of us lucked out with really good parents. I remember as a child always enjoying school, enjoying classes, enjoying when school started. And not that I disliked summer, but there must have been a very social aspect to that liking. And when I got through, I guess, late grade school, throughout high school, I sort of was defined, and this is the odd thing, because it completely sidetracks any theatrical or artistic endeavors. I'm a numbers person, and I thought as late as even high school, well, I'm going to be an accountant or a businessman or a guy that puts on the suit and carries the briefcase to work every day, office, so and so. And then I realized throughout high school, and then once I started college, even though I was good in that vein, I just wasn't interested in it. And I jumped around to a couple of different colleges and then finally ended up at Point Park here in Pittsburgh, and then ended up graduating with a theater degree. So I think that's probably where it was all the time for me. It just, I guess, came out a little late. Well, not late. It came out on time.
Yeah. Would you say that you were interested in theater, or did that just come along the way when you were going through these colleges?
Well, I can't say as a kid that I was. I took classes when I was in, I think, 7th and 8th grade at the Pittsburgh Playhouse, which was actually sort of combined with Point Park at the time. Actually, this might have been before it was combined with Point Park. And so there was an interest there, obviously, in 7th, 8th grade, but I stayed away from it in high school. I was in the band. I played trumpet, so I was in not only the marching band, but the concert band, and then the orchestra for the musicals, but I didn't have what it took to get up on stage in high school to be in a musical. I never would have, not in a million years. So I think it was always there, but I finally had the courage to jump once I got past high school into college years.
Do you find sometimes, like, whether you did an Agent Emes or in general jobs, did you always have that inside you of like the hesitancy to come forward in a crowd or in a camera or in a scene? Or
Well, Oddly enough, as comfortable as I am on stage at times in big quote marks here, real life, sometimes I'm completely uncomfortable. Um, I remember, geez, well through high school. Now, this is dating all of us, I suppose. I had trouble picking up the phone to call for a pizza. I had somebody else do it. I was backward that my brothers had to do it or my parents had to do it. I couldn't do that. What are you kidding? I'm only 17 years old. I can't pick up the phone to call for a pizza. Completely backward in some situations, but very comfortable on stage.
Um, so so I guess the acting aspect, was it like learning and then you was there a time where you actually tried to get a career and that's how Agent Emes came up, or what was it like from between you got your theater to when you wanted to actually pursue it?
I had done a lot of theater in Pittsburgh. Um, I guess it would be labeled as non-professional because it wasn't as part of a union or anything like that. But 20, 25 years ago, there were a lot of really good non-professional theaters in Pittsburgh, non-professional, so to speak. Just that union label. We were very professional in what we did. There was some real good to great work that was done, but you didn't make a dime off of it. So that's what I mean by non-professional. And I had done a lot of those plays at a lot of those theaters in and around Pittsburgh, in and around the area. Um, I was working with a director at the Jewish Community Center in Pittsburgh, and she, I believe, knew label, and then sort of connected us, bridged the gap there. Uh,
Yeah,
when
Label
things,
said that she acted in the first two. She was
did
Betzalo's
she?
secretary.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez, I forget. She may have. I don't think I had any scenes with her though. So she may have well
Yeah, right, yeah.
been in those two. Yeah. So that was the
Was
connection.
right. Was Agent Emes your first movie or on camera set scenery or
No, we had done some things. There's a guy who's out in California now, who Point Park, Point Park Theater. We went to school at the same time, and he wanted to do some things here in Pittsburgh behind the camera. That was his interest. He more of a writer than an actor. So we did some things with him in and around Pittsburgh. So it wasn't completely new to me at the time. New-ish.
um but what was it like as a big role as Clarence, even though Clarence is not necessarily a main role as so to speak, but was it
Yeah, I think it turned out to be a feature, to be honest with you, and it was a group effort, but the story surrounded my character. So the one that we did with him, yeah, it was a major part. We did a lot of things with it. So behind the camera, in front of the camera, that wasn't completely new to me, although most of my experience certainly was on stage.
the way Label described how the process went is that I forgot her name, but the one that bridged you together with Label like said that like you kind of like fit yourself with Clarence, the
Well,
character. Do you kind of feel that way? Do you feel that there's a lot of difference, similarities?
I suppose it depends on the situation. Um, I think maybe that type of shoe fits more comfortably than others. Uh, but oh, geez, I don't know if I could say a definite yes or no to that. I think we did what we had to do with Clarence. It's funny. I remember telling Label all these years ago. I'm a Catholic kid. I made my first communion, my confirmation. So a lot of the stuff that we were playing around with, I had really no idea where that
Yeah.
came from. I was never, you know, a 7-year-old Jewish kid growing up. I didn't have that background. Although I'm sure at times I've been a clumsy idiot like Clarence, so at least I could pull that and put it into what we were doing there. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I kind of want to start like how it was for the beginning, like how it evolutionized over the films, because Label even said that the first time he was kind of experimenting and he had a company, but as time went on, he got more involved in more jobs. He was doing more on set. Uh, did you kind my basic question is, what was it like on set with Label as a director? Because a lot of films could go either wrong or right with the director, or wrong or right
Sure.
with the actor. But so I'm just like trying to see like basically my question is what is your how is your dynamic with Label?
Well, as I remember it, and it does seem like 100 years ago that we were doing some of this stuff. To be blunt, he certainly had a solid idea of what he wanted to do. It was difficult at times, like I said, for me to latch on completely with it because I didn't know the substance material. I didn't know where any of this was coming from. He had some good crew people, which is very important. Uh, it seemed like time was always of the essence, but it always is anyway, I
Especially
suppose.
in the dependent films.
Sure, sure. So I kind of felt like we were always on the run doing stuff. At least that's the memory I have, and that might have been truthful. Um, so yeah, he certainly had a definite idea, but we kind of had to, if I remember correctly, get it down, make our hit because tomorrow's another day, as it
Yeah.
is, those things.
So, you are one of the only actors that are in almost every single film.
Really?
Um, yeah, because I mean, you've been through 11 out of 13. Like, not a lot of people that worked on Agent Emes could say they were a main role in almost all of the films. Um, did it feel different as time went on for every film? Because it did. The first one was 2003, and the last one was around 2012, 2013. That's a decade of, and especially from the beginning of the 21st century to where we are now, it's like very different way with technology and everything. Was it always the same atmosphere for every film, even though things have changed technological wise or film wise, or did it?
I don't remember it being completely different or anything that I carry with me now 10, 15 years later. Um, as it is in film, as I recall this process, hey, Greg, are you free Friday night? Are you free Saturday morning? Can you do it next Tuesday afternoon? That type of thing. So you'd step in at a location. Um, Maybe it was 2, 3 pages of dialogue, a couple of scenes, something like that. And you just sort of step in, fill it in. Okay, we're good. I'm out. We'll see you when you need me next. So that's sort of how I remember working with it the entire way through because Clarence was, even though I guess 11 of 13, which escaped my mind completely, to be honest with you, uh, I wasn't in a lot of each of the episodes. So fill me in
Right.
here, fill me in there. And that's kind of how it went until I saw some of the episodes. I wasn't completely sure uh, how Clarence fit in to the episode because I didn't really have it. I didn't see it, until I got a copy of it. So I don't recall that being much different from beginning to end. It was kind of uh, here's when we need you. Here's what we need. Let's give it a shot. Okay, that worked. Let's try it again. Perfect it. Try to massage it into what we need it to be each time.
But I think that's what's the point of Clarence. Like the point of Clarence is just Clarence being in the film, whether he fit or not, but it just fit anyway because that was Clarence. He was that psychic. He was the comic relief of the films. Do you find yourself more comfortable with those type of roles, or would you in general in film and theater do you like being in the more serious roles? Like, what's your sweet spot of a type of character?
Well, for a while there, it had been sort of I think this is gonna hurt my arm patting myself on the back, like the romantic leading male type thing, and that's fine. Um, I guess more from a comic aspect, I think a lot of those things would more land my way. So I would think some of the better work I've done has been completely away from that because I feel I'm stretching it, I'm doing more. But I tended to go that way on my own angle, and I think it came back to me with a lot of different roles and plays,
So
which
the
is
one
fine.
thing, yeah, it's true. And I think sometimes actors um kind of like the idea of trying to stretch or trying to strive to something not more than themselves, but something different because then it kind of like it's almost like a thrill of like trying to do something that you're not normal of, and especially when it's acting. And especially when it's in front of a camera, so you're adding more to the dynamic of how you're acting, and And also sometimes I heard from other actors that I interviewed with podcast that a lot of times they say that every character you find, you kind of see a part of yourself in that scenario, in that character, whether it's very minute of an aspect or a big aspect. But what is it like to you when you take these characters? Do you try to draw something, or you're just trying to be something? Like, what's your connection usually to characters that you take?
Well, you have to find their truth, and I guess on some degree you have to like them, even if they turn out to not be good people for the
Because otherwise
story.
it wouldn't be authentic.
Well, you're right, right. I would even think if you played the bad guy's doing things for a reason, not that you may do that as a person, but you've got to find that character's truth. You got to find why that character is doing things. It makes sense to him. So, inside of the story you're telling in that particular production, you have to bring that out and maybe even let the audience see, hey, he's doing it for a reason. It's all bad, but there's a reason there. That's his truth. Um, so you sort of start there. You know the story you have to tell. If you have a good director, if you have good fellow actors, you can get together and sort of figure it out. I've always taken a script and figured it's just one big Sudoku puzzle. You have to kind of somehow piece it together and figure it out. It's there. It's all there. You just got to find it, and then you got to bring it out.
So how do you find that in Clarence, which is very much a comic relief? It's not demanding an audience member or an actor to overthink it if they don't want to. That type of character. So how would you approach it in that aspect?
Well, with something like Clarence, if I recall, find the joke, find the funny. None of our scenes, if I recall, you may know better than I, were very long scenes. I remember him sort of cutting into us, cutting back from us in all of our evilness. Try to find something funny. Try to play something up broadly. The base that you're talking to, and try to get the funny because they're moving on. I remember sort of approaching it if it was walking down steps, if it was somehow talking to what was that, Dr. Evil, Uncle Evil? What was that? Dr. Evil,
Dr. Lotov, Uncle Evil.
Uncle Evil. I'm combining both of them. Well, we had a couple
Yeah,
different
yeah,
acts.
yeah.
Do something funny, keep it in frame, uh, hopefully get the laugh because other stuff is coming.
So kind of pivoting to Dr. Lotov and Uncle Evil. Um, how was it working with Jorge?
Well, that was interesting. Yeah, he certainly, if I recall, had ideas about what he wanted to do. Whether this is just recall now, whether it was right or not, he sort of had his
Yeah.
idea. You have to bring. So I appreciated that, but I do remember that being very interesting. Working with him, he was completely different than working with Sam after that.
Yeah, because like you kind of see, I was talking to David Dietz or Dietz, I forgot his last name,
Yeah,
but he was the young Uncle Evil. And
yeah,
we were talking about the differences between Dr. Lota and Uncle Evil, even though like Label Cohen says, like I was writing characters and sometimes I wasn't really like overthinking it as I would be personally. But like you could tell like Dr. Lota was like the outright evil, like getting in there and doing something, and Uncle Evil was more like Dr. Lota, and then Uncle Evil was more like the everything is I'm in charge of anything on the background. I'm calm. There's no I don't need to put my hands dirty if I don't really have to, and everything's just falling into plan. And it was kind of funny because and what's funny about it is that Clarence kind of stayed just Clarence for those two dynamics.
yeah. Well, it was completely different working with them. I remember Sam uh, seemed to have a lot of problems learning his lines, and that when we would get to set and the clock's always ticking, that we would try to, if I recall, cut it up in shorter scenes so that he could get his lines, or we would rehearse back and forth, try to be on your toes because we got to get it. And hopefully the lines will come through, throw some character onto that. The scene works. Okay, let's move on. If I recall correctly, yeah, which is always a
That's
challenge.
right, for sure. And especially, I'm not saying Sam had any issues or anything, but he was much older than Jorge kind of looked like.
I think so. Yeah, I think I wouldn't have known their ages, but I think Sam was older. Yeah.
What was, I'm not saying to compare the two, but I'm saying for you acting as Clarence on set, what was like more to rough off of, Dr. Lotov or Uncle Evil?
I think it was a little more difficult with Uncle Evil because we had those issues of putting the scene together. You're trying as a character to sort of see the page through, so to speak, or the page and a half, whatever it was, and you need to pick up momentum. You need to keep that and get to the finish line for that particular scene or that particular joke if we were shooting for it. And a lot of times, especially in comedy, and certainly our scenes were lighter, or at least my look on it was lighter, that you need that pace. You can't have a lot of air in comedy. And if you're thinking of that line, there's a little bit of air, it kills the timing, it kills the rhythm, it would kill the scene. So it was a bit more of a challenge working with Uncle Evil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But was it like sometimes really ridiculous when you're at the moment? Like for example, like when you're kidnapping rabbis, you're just like, what are we doing in the story? Why are we kidnapping rabbis?
That's just it. Yeah. Yeah, it was because not only did I not know the entire piece, again, young Catholic kid, I don't, what am I doing here? All right, we'll do it. You want it? We'll do it. Did we do it
But
right?
it's
Was
not
that what
it's
you were looking
it's
for?
not just you. Like if Label asks me, okay, you're today we're kidnapping rabbis, I'll be like, what? Uh,
That must be the challenge. I would imagine if you're working on a film and you're working against all the computer technology that those films find actors in, that would be very difficult. I would think for me. I guess you learn it, you figure it out. But
But
you know
I
the
guess like the difference is though is that when you're in a big film, let's say like superhero, you're
yeah,
kind of like going into it saying, okay, there's gonna be something I'm not gonna it's not gonna happen in real life, so let's get into it. But like Agent Emes is very grounded, somewhat grounded, but
sure.
like so you're like going into to like not really skepticals or like a CGI or anything. And so like everything is like there in front of you. So instead of like shooting like heroes shooting things or villains destroying things, you're like the most you do is evil is kidnap rabbis, and it's just like funny. It's
Well,
just funny in that aspect.
yeah, I've always found that to be interesting. The practicalness, I suppose, of any sort of filming. You watch enough TV shows, you watch enough films where an actor has to come through the door with urgency, but it didn't work that time. Now come through the door slower. Now come through the door quicker. Now come through the door with a big smile on your face. After a while, that's just silly. You at least in theater, as they say, film director gets the last cut. Theater, the actor gets the last cut because it's straight through. I'm just walking through the door, but you have to bring it. Where we're not going to try it 5 more times. I imagine doing stuff like that, pulling a rabbi through a door. Let's do it 8 times. Well, after a while, it was silly on take one. Now we're on take 8. We'll roll the dice, see what we come up with.
Yeah. But, it's funny. Yeah, we were mentioning about practical versus um special effects is because I was listening to a conversation of two actors. I'm forgetting what it was about, but basically, like one actor was in that franchise in the 1990s, and the other actor was in that same franchise that actor was in, but now. And they were saying like there's pros and cons to having practical and special effects. That practical, you're kind of limited to what's around you, but at the same time, it's what you need to interact and react. But then, as opposed to like special effects, there's more levity because you could just imagine and be all out and just be yourself as the character because there's nothing that's right in front of you that's limiting you. But then at the same time, you kind of have to go with the flow. So there's like those different. So it's interesting that we're talking about this.
Yeah, I think I would find it very difficult, and I suppose you find a way through these things if you're in that type of a film. For example, like a horror film, where you have to be scared because here comes the bad guy coming after you. Well, until the bad guy's coming after me, I don't know how I could just, okay, Greg, we need you to scream now, but be really scared. That would almost seem fake to me. But that's what that is. I guess you have to learn that as you go along. Whereas in theater, you would build that up perhaps through a scene, through the relationship that you're doing live right now, through 12 pages of dialogue, and you have a chance to do all kinds of things within that. That's a different sandbox.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I always find people having different preferences in that way. Meaning, like, I always find that actors are very divisive of what they prefer. The theater where it's building up, you have everything, a story, step by step, or the process of the filmmaking, but at the same time, it's like you're filming scenes out of order because of locations, and there's a lot of cutting, and there's a lot of editing. What do you find yourself liking better?
Well, I like the intimacy of film. I do like that, that camera in your eyes, and you should be able to give a lot. Um, I remember during my more formative years, every Friday when I could get the car from my mother, I ran off to a movie theater. So I knew deep down there's something there. I like that experience of everybody's sitting in a dark room, everything's up on that big screen. Um, Now, I was never a big fan of the science fiction and all of that stuff. Anyway, I do like the more intimate films, uh, but I do like that medium. But then, obviously, I've done a lot more theater work than film work. So when you're on that stage and you're sort of controlling something, there's a great power to that, and it's uh, very rewarding if it works.
Right.
So
Uh,
I got to come in maybe half and half on that because they both can be very rewarding. As an actor, I don't know how much you do differently for the theater than you would for a film. Um, Maybe with mechanics and sound and stuff like that. But as an actor, I think you still have to approach a role the same way. You still have to tell that story.
so Sam was a retired actor in Pittsburgh when you filmed Agent Emes. Did you know?
Yeah.
Did you watch any of Sam's old stuff, or did you know Sam from before?
I knew of him before. I think we did a play together before we ended up doing the Agent Emes together at one
Oh
time,
wow.
if I recall. Yeah, we did. I think it was a three-person play, me and Bridget and Sam, if I'm recalling correctly, which might have been, oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe before we did our work on Emes. So I knew him from that, and I knew of him. I knew he had a history doing some things in Pittsburgh film.
What one major difference of Sam versus Jorge is that Sam was in the business for a long time, already a famous actor. Jorge was kind of approaching it as um
His big
someone
break.
that, yeah, yeah, exactly. So did you see that clearly on screen as they're acting? And if so, and in general, what do you like working with actors that are in the industry for a long time, or guys that are like kind of in it for the first time?
Well, I remember Sam certainly being more comfortable, uh, line issues, notwithstanding.
Yeah, aside, yeah.
He was more comfortable on set. He obviously had done it many times before. He had been around that set or a set and cameras and lights and sound. That would maybe shake somebody the first couple of times out of the gate because they're obviously just not used to that setup. So I do remember Sam being more comfortable. And if I recall correctly, Jorge was always trying to make his mark, trying to get in there and make his mark. If memory serves right, so there was a difference there. Yeah.
Which process? So which type of co-star do you appreciate or do you like working with? Do you like when the guy is like figuring out with you or at the moment and he's in there, or do you like the guy that's already been through this and he kind of knows the ropes?
Well, I know in theater on stage, I like to dig. I like to rehearse, dig, get that play underneath your fingernails, go home tired. If you're going home tired, you've done it right. If you have a headache, you've
Yeah.
done it right because you're trying to figure out the scene, you're trying to find out the dynamics of the scene. Um, so I like somebody who's comfortable because they know now we have to go to work, we have to do this. If somebody's always trying to make their mark, be seen, get the laugh, the line should give you the laugh if you've done your character work correctly. If you're out there um, like you're doing a personal monologue or you're doing a comedy routine trying to get the laugh, that's not going to work in the confines of the scene, at least my opinion. So anybody who's comfortable with themselves knowing it's not about me, it's about this character and the story and this scene, we can get to work, we can figure it out. It's going to make that scene, the production, much, much better.
Do you so I heard like different things like the easiest type of character to approach of seriousness is in theater and the easiest of a comic act character is on camera. Do you kind of find that also or
You mean serious on stage, comic on film?
yeah, like the way people are more comfortable or the way people like enjoy doing like in those type of characters.
Gee, I don't know. If you're trying to get that laugh, it's immediate in theater,
Yeah.
whereas in film you don't even know if you got it. You'll see the finished work weeks, months, who knows how long later. Will it even play? Will the editor cut it up right?
Yeah.
On stage, it's yours. If it's a fastball, you got to hit it out of the park. And if you get that laugh, a lot of things after that become easier. I know doing a couple of real funny plays, if you're a couple of farces, and I love farce. If in the first couple of pages, there's a couple of good laughs on page 1 through 5, and you get them. Uh, it's going to be a good night because the audience is there, and it's obviously more immediate. Of course, on the other side of the spectrum, if you don't get that laugh, and you may get it once on take one on film, you may get it take two on film. It's not funny to the sound guy on take six. He knows what's coming. If you don't get it on stage, you better figure things out. You're in a comedy here. Hopefully, it could be a long night if you're not getting those laughs.
Yeah. Did you have after Agent Emes, did you like what was your interaction with the Jewish community in Pittsburgh in general? Did you like get closer to them and were you there in the premieres? Do you get stopped on the street from kids or anything or
No, not at all.
do you wish you had more interaction with people that watched it over their lives?
Oh, yeah. It's always nice to get a little bit of feedback to see how it played because you're inside of it, and even on stage, you're inside of this thing. You don't know how it's playing. It would have been nice. I remember Label telling me a long time ago um, that I think at the time the cassettes were selling
Yeah,
well
yeah,
up in Brooklyn, up in Williamsburg. And he said, "Boy, if you ever go to Williamsburg, you wouldn't be able to walk across the street." I said, "Okay, yeah, whatever, whatever." Well, here we are. It's going to be 4 years ago. My nephew and I were up in New York City, and we went to a deli to Williamsburg. And I thought, hey, to my nephew, I said, "Hey, we're in Williamsburg. People may recognize me." He thought I was goof. Nobody recognized me. Nobody knew who the heck I was. I guess the years have
yeah.
passed. It would have been nice maybe to be able to get some response to see if it played, because you don't know that when you're
Yeah.
making something like that.
If
But I
you
didn't have
go to
much of a relationship with any of that after the fact, if I recall.
if you go to Crown Heights, that's the neighborhood in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
It's in Easter Parkway type of area. That's the place you want to be if people would recognize you. Because I think
really?
Williamsburg, yeah. Because I feel like the cassettes. I think the first episodes were really big in the Jewish world in general, but now it's more like groups of people that actually like really dig into Asian MS. I show it's the Asian MS sometimes to my class, when there's
Oh,
like
gee.
extra free time and they're watching it and they're asking me questions. It's really funny to see that it still never ages. So that's cool. Um,
How old are you of a child are you teaching?
fifth grade.
Oh, and that's right in the strike zone then.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yeah.
that's what Agent Emes is. Label was saying that when he started out Agent Emes, he did a film with Jorge and Amy Gooderson, for the Jewish community in 2002 about, and it was like a dinner like for the yeshiva, the university school, the
Okay.
Jewish school, and he made like a film for their dinner, and it was like a short film, and it was like a small spy thing, but it wasn't like anything big. But he said how when kids and parents came up like, oh, my kids watched this and it was so good and whatever, he realized that there was a gap because the only really Jewish media was either adults or like the very young kids when it's like, oh, like the funny guys talking about Judaism and stuff like that, like kids songs and kindergarten. So there was nothing like for that between for the teenage and older youth type of age. And so that's what Asian MS like strikes. That's where they
I recall him saying that at the time that there was nothing for that particular age group.
yeah. And you see it clearly. Like and also like my family jokes about the a lot of the lines all the time. We quote a lot of things from it. It's pretty nostalgic. Um my favorite Clarence moment
Oh,
is
geez.
when you probably remember it's more recent, but
I
it
hope.
basically
I
no,
hope.
but yeah. So basically Sam is there's a scene where Sam Uncle Evil is dying and Clarence is on his bedside and you're
Okay.
like crying and then Uncle Evil says like what are you doing? And you see him cutting a onion.
Oh, that was the kind of yeah. That's what we were shooting for. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of my favorite parts. Um how was it playing with kids, especially the Asian MS actors?
Oh, I didn't have any problems with that. I mean, I knew that they didn't have the acting experience. Obviously, you wouldn't. They were young kids. So I think they were looking at it from a different angle than I was. But I didn't have any problems with them. They say what kids and animals, right? But I didn't have any issues. I didn't have any issues with it. It was kind of fun. It was kind of fun.
Um the main question I have kind of with the kids is that like was it hard, so especially with these kids that are kind of like they never acted before and they're kind of getting that experience, was it cool in that aspect as opposed to having kids that are like child actors or anything?
Well, child actors, I guess, by design, by definition, don't have that discipline because they just haven't done it enough. And
Right.
I think you have to be really intelligent to be a really good actor. And when you're 7 and 8, you're 9 and 10, you're still developing, and you can be a smart 10-year-old, but you may not have the discipline to, well, learn your lines, figure out what you want to do as a character, and then being on a set can be draining. And I'm very impatient. I like to get on, let's do it. Are we done? Goodbye. And that just isn't how. That's not realistic on a set. And if I can be a crybaby at my age, well, I'm certain that it can affect a 10-year-old too, because they'd rather be off playing on their computer or dribbling a basketball or doing something. But I didn't really remember like being affected by that or it being a big downer or anything. They were kids. We got it.
Right.
But they weren't bad. They weren't bad.
Well, was it fun to have kids on set? Did it add a lot to like, let's say those dragging moments where like, oh, 1 second, we got to reset the camera, or
Yeah.
all right, we're gonna have to take a little break.
Yeah, I had no problem with it. I don't remember interacting too much with them. Um, I don't think we did a lot with the kids, if I recall, with kids in that particular scene. I think a lot of the stuff was either with Sam or Jorge or David in that one episode. I think there were kids in it. I remember a birthday party scene, I think, at one time. Uh, but I don't know if we
Yeah,
did a lot
that was the donkey one. Yeah.
with the donkey with the birth. Yeah, with at the birthday party. That's right. Um, it's funny because so many years after that, I was saying that I worked at a church and a Catholic elementary school. And had you told me that for 2 years, this was during COVID, that I was going to be like the main lunch monitor for the grade school, well, I'd have laughed at you, and everybody who knows me would have laughed at you as well. But it turned out to be so rewarding for me to be around uh, kindergarten, first, second, third grade. I didn't know that existed. I don't have any children, so I didn't know that existed. It was wonderfully rewarding to be around the kids. So yeah, it's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah, and especially with that age, it's very much like before it gets complicated for the kids,
Yeah,
like in a good way, meaning not in
yeah,
a negative way, God forbid. But it is that sweet spot where they're smart enough, but they're also innocent enough to like that basically that's the balance. That's the age gap for that balance. So
yeah. They're goofballs, but they don't know how to open up their milk carton. You know,
yeah.
that's kind of what it is. Yeah.
Um, there was would you if there was like one if there was like future episodes of Agent MS, what would you see? Would you want to stay like Clarence being that comic relief once in a while, or would you ever have you ever talked with Label about maybe expanding on the character? Like somehow we get into Clarence's old life and we find out like, oh, he has like he grew up with a great cute grandmother, and it's like, why are you in this evil organization or anything? Like,
Clarence's origin story. Yeah.
yeah,
You
that would have been a
know,
cool like prequel.
I don't think we ever talked about anything like that. I don't know. Would Clarence, by definition, change completely if he were head of the organization now? Or does Clarence, by definition, have to be the idiot sidekick? I
Yeah,
don't know. It's a good question. I think Clarence has to be Clarence. Otherwise, he ain't Clarence. Uh,
exactly.
yeah, I wouldn't see him as making any progress.
Right.
He's that goofy sidekick, which he's always been, which he will always be. You know.
Yeah, I love that the most character progressive like for the character progress for the character we ever get in the films is when he says like when I was a teenager I answer her ad and here I am.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you get.
The
Um
origin story of Clarence. I never quite
y-
thought of that.
yeah, exactly. I can always imagine like Clarence growing up with a sweet grandmother, so he's kind of like always the one that's like walking around, carrying around. That's what he gets a personality kind of. So I would always imagine like that.
Well, he may not even know that he's doing evil. He's just helping his friend. He may not even know he's just helping his friend. Nice guy. He
This
could be
guy that's
completely.
like, I'm gonna take all the happiness from the world. He's like, yeah, sure, buddy.
Oh, I can help you with that. Oh, good. He needs my help. Yeah, but I think that's Clarence. Just innocent, uh, nice guy, helpful. Um, Obviously not too brilliant, but naive to the point where he is what he is.
Yeah, that's really funny. Um, do you remember any of the differences between the Agent Nemesis that you interacted with, or it kind of just blurs together, kind of?
It does kind of blur. Were there two? You're going to know better than
There
me.
were there were three characters before actors,
Oh, geez.
meaning the first five they had Label's son, Shalom Bear. He had a
Right.
son, Shalom Bear.
I
The
remember him.
second one was a kid. His name is Issachar Schaller. They
A little
actually got a
shorter,
different kid. Yeah,
light.
Gingy.
Yeah.
And
And there were
then for
more after
the
that. Oh, geez.
yeah, well, you only interacted with three of them. So the third character, the third Asian MS generation, they had a kid to join in, but then for some reason at the 13th one, that kid had to go. So Label used his second, like another son of his, Mendy Cohen.
I vaguely recall that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah.
the one
Or
in
at
the
least,
donkey.
okay, okay. That makes a little bit of sense. So there were three. Oh,
There was three, yeah, and only three of the kids you interacted with.
okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. Sure.
How was working with the donkey? Was it a long process because they had to be like a separate crew for the animal, or they had to take care of the animal?
Yeah, if I recall, I had to handle that thing. We were in a wooded area, I think, doing it. And I don't
Yeah.
remember it giving me a lot of problems, but you're at the mercy of the donkey there.
Yeah.
I obviously don't do that for a living, so you just try to get from point A to point B, keeping your fingers crossed, that the donkey's going to be in it.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so if there was one, is there one of your favorite things that you did with Clarence that you remember?
I don't know if I remember any one specific thing, but I do remember just having fun and being able to play with Clarence, play with the character of it, um, knowing it was for kids, not having any idea if it's going to translate. Uh, Obviously, not really having any knowledge of the target audience that we were shooting for. You had a chance to play, and I really liked the opportunity to be playful with it. I don't remember any specifics. I think that would cover it in a general sense.
It would have been funny if there was a moment of validation for Clarence. Like if like there was something happening and there was like 5 seconds of him doing like all of a sudden karate and he just did something and like where did that come from? I don't know. Moving on. It would have been
Yeah,
funny to see that.
all those opportunities you think of now.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And then we never talk about it again. Like it actually
yes,
happened, but then moving on, Clarence is Clarence.
and I hope Label was happy with what we were trying to do there. He seemed to be, and
Oh yeah.
I mean, if it graduated to a dozen or so episodes, it obviously was successful in some terms, to keep it moving. So, it's good to know that the work worked.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I when I started doing the podcast and doing like interviews with people that I grew up with, so the one thing that I keep saying, like, I'm gonna try to get Clarence, I'm gonna try to get Clarence, and people are saying, like, if you do Clarence, I'm gonna listen to it. Like, that's the one episode I will listen to your podcast. Because it's so like because these kids, it's very funny when you meet an audience that identifies with your character more than you kind of meaning
Yeah.
like they grow up with Clarence and then to them like Clarence is like that is Clarence like that's
Really.
crazy and then yeah I mean like but it's interesting to see that because if for example for myself like when I do things with kids in school and programs and stuff like that, like they know me as like, oh, that, like Uziel, like Uziel. But then like when I meet my family, it's like, oh, that's okay, it's Uziel. It's very funny, like different things that kids identify you with as opposed to like what's in real. It's not scary or anything, and it's not misleading or it's not negative, but it's just interesting to see the pure like perspective that kids have to identify with you.
Yeah, they don't realize that the teacher they see at school is also a husband, is also a father, is also a son, or daughter, wife, sister, whatever the case might be. They don't see that person as that person. They only know them as teacher or whatever
Right.
the case might be. Uh, yeah, kids wouldn't know that. They only know you as you. It's that pure. It's that simple. You're the guy from school. You're not anything else. And it's
Right.
odd because working at the school with those kids, I saw them as these little goofballs that couldn't open up their milk carton, not realizing, oh yeah, that's somebody's actual daughter. They're
Yeah.
defined by the fact that they have two parents. You just see them on school, so it's kind of reflective. It can happen both ways. But yeah, certainly kids wouldn't know you as anything else. They're not thinking that way. I didn't realize Clarence resonated as much as it apparently has. I was never really aware of that.
Well, the series in general did, and I
Really?
think what Label's strength was is that it wasn't just another film to show to kids. It had like a theme and it had a
Yeah.
lesson. Like it had like some sort of dynamic that specifically Jewish kids that don't have much of entertainment, especially at that time. Now it's much bigger, but at that time with the lack of entertainment, now kids could actually enjoy it and learn from it. And I think that's what parents and children alike really appreciated from those films.
Did you watch it as a child?
Oh yeah, I grew up with I remember growing up with three of the VHSs of one, two, and three, and then everything else we got a DVD. And I remember like when we like as VHSs and cassettes tend to do, they would break. And
Sure.
so, yeah, and I remember just like, we gotta get the DVD. Like, it has to be like, it was before computer and you can have everything at your fingertips. So it's
Yeah.
like everything was hard copy. So like, we need to get the DVD. And I grew up with 1 to 5, and then like, so that's around 2003 to 2005 or 6. I think it was 5. And then there was like a period where the label was doing other projects. So he did something with Ruven Russell, the guy who played Pizzalo.
Right.
And then I remember my father. So my father, we're Chabad emissaries. So that's like basically Jewish outreach in other places. So I grew up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And once a year, my father would go to New York for a conference with these type of rabbis. And I remember he just came home one day, or was it my mother? I think it was my mother. My mother came home and she like opened the suitcase because usually it's like a treat or something that she brought from New York, and she pulls out a green Agent Emes 6, and we're like, what? Like, I remember that was like my first thing that was geeking out. That I was like, the what? There's a new one. I thought there was only 5, and that's it. And I remember, and it's pretty funny. I was also like more professional because it was widescreen and a lot of things are more clear.
Hmm.
But yeah, I remember that. We grew up with it. We quote all the time lines like as like conversation likes. Like sometimes I remember one time we were talking about this program, and like we tend like, so my parents would after we do programs, my parents would always discuss like, all right, this program was very good, it was very successful, next year let's do something different. And once in a while we'll quote Uncle Evil's line, I did my best to do my worst. You know what I mean? Like it's so much like ingrained on us, and it's not just Agent Emes, it's just in general Jewish media. But I think Agent Emes was like, I think here's also another aspect. Even now, Agent Emes kids love, because even now there is that aspect where people are like Jewish entertainers are scared to go past a line, kind of, meaning like they don't. It's also like in when it comes to regular movies when they rate things PG, PG-13 or stuff. There's like this line that they'll never trust the audience or the kids' audience to understand and actually like experience in the film, meaning like either like they'll water it down or they'll goof it up. You know what I mean? And Label had this balance where he made a very professional, acted, written film, and he didn't doubt in his mind that kids will understand it. I think that's what resonated with audiences, that it stuck to his professionalism. It's not just the quality of the crew, the quality of the film. I think it was very much the writing and the acting that really resonated as professionalism and quality. And I think that's what people resonated with those films specifically.
Well, that's great that it still resonates 20 years later. 20 years
Yeah.
later, yeah, I guess so. 20 some years later. And that's wild. I remember him telling me that it was successful and knowing it had to be if we carried it on. Um, but boy, you don't really have a chance firsthand now to see how that is.
And it also it's kind of also scary in a sense that like, because you kind of, it seems like from you what we were just discussing is that it kind of was a phase in your life and you kind of moved on kind of, but then it kind of gives validation like, no, like actually there's something that could still resonate from your past life or your past acting careers, or
Yeah.
or I'm saying like your roles that you've done.
Yeah, I've done so many plays here in Pittsburgh. I don't remember things from them. So when
Yeah.
you do something like this, that I guess stuck to the film, as they say, and it really made maybe a difference and was good entertainment for people that they remember it years later. Well, that's like the ultimate compliment. That's a good
Yeah.
deal. Can't beat that.
It also kind of gives a sense that like at the moment, it's with everything in life, when you're in a moment of doing something and you're kind of thinking to yourself, what am I doing, or like this is harder than I thought, and then afterwards you see the outcome and you see the sense of accomplishment, and it just, and it, not that it cancels out anything you went through, but it kind of validates that phase in life that you had. So if let's say it took a person like a lot of his money and capabilities to like get through a degree of being a doctor, let's say,
Right.
and then when the patient tells you, "Oh, doctor, you helped my life," it doesn't take out any of the hardship and any of the loss that you had to become a doctor, but what it does is that it enhances your experience and it really validates the hard work that you do.
Hmm. Sometimes you're so busy creating. So sometimes you're so busy being in a moment you don't realize you're creating one.
Right.
Maybe not just for yourself, but for others too. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the one thing I also like, was there any discussion of why Clarence wears the same clothes for all 13 films?
I don't know if it was continuity or maybe lack of wardrobe. Was it a white cap and black shirt, black pants?
So the first two was a white cap, but throughout all the films, you had a black shirt, black pants, black shoes.
I'm assuming black equals evil, and
Yeah.
I assume that's where we were going with that. I don't recall there being any talk of really anything different as far as a color scheme. Um, did Lotov wear black as well? I think
Yeah, black. He had a turtleneck.
he had
There's
a
like one,
turtleneck.
yeah. There's one scene where in number five, basically Dr. Lotov and Clarence go to see the show because they want to see if like any happiness, because they try to take away happiness for one
Right?
episode. And so you see like they went to a concert and you see Dr. Lotov trying to blend in with his turtleneck and you're just relaxing, eating popcorn, enjoying it. Like, who cares if people see me type of thing.
Clarence.
Yeah, Clarence, exactly. There's one blooper where is really like the Clarence blooper, and when you were doing the breakers with Jorge, so like Jorge
I
was going
do
like
remember
that
that.
one,
Yeah.
and he did that one, that one, that one, and there's so many times that you kept laughing with Jorge and the act like the crew.
We couldn't get it. We couldn't get it, and like I was saying before, you're repeating stuff, and it's silly to begin with, and then we got to film, we got to do this again, we got to take the shot of you in the breaker again, and after a while, yeah, you realize you're adults doing this. This is what we're doing now. It is silly. It's silly times three because now you can't get off the just. Let's get the shot and go, but you can't.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
stuck in that. You got to dig out of it. I do remember. I do remember the breakers. Yeah, I remember that, and I remember an episode on an airplane. At least,
A helicopter.
ours was it a helicopter? Our
Yeah, yeah,
scenes,
yeah.
airplane or a helicopter or something. I forget if we went out to. Did we go out to an airport, and we were actually in an actual plane? I think we were, if I
But yeah, you were
recall.
in actual. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
real practical helicopter. You were
Yeah.
inside, and it was you, Jorge, and Shalom Bear.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I remember it. Well, we had obviously mine that it was flying and it was a bumpy ride. I,
Yeah,
I recall that. Yeah. That doesn't happen to me, in real life ever. So that's,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah, I do remember that. I remember the breakers. It was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
What's the one thing that you kind of see a strength in Label's directing as opposed to other directors? Because the reason why I'm trying to talk about Label a lot is because Label is what made Agent Emes happen. So
Mhm.
so what thing do you see that you liked about Label in his directing that you would say that was probably better than most experience? Not saying he was the best director, but an aspect of him that you appreciated.
Well, I recall him allowing me to try things. I worked for a director. This was for a theatrical production, who had the entire show completely blocked, and she wanted me to move my right leg, not now, but now, and she wanted me to raise my hand now, and I just felt really constrained. I thought, ugh. Now she had to her credit, she had a clear vision of what she wanted down to each actor's movement, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a lot tougher than I thought because you really have to stay within those lines. She had a vision. Um, Certainly Label did as well, but I remember him giving me the freedom to let's just try stuff, let's play around and see what works. Let me bring something to it. I appreciate that as an actor, And if I ever got too far out with either what we were trying to convey in the dialogue or in that scene or in that particular episode within the target audience, then he would certainly bring it back in. But I
Right.
appreciate the freedom that he gave. Sure, that was great.
I directed like two short films like when I was 19, 18. And the one thing that I realized right away is that you very much have to let the actor, because at the end of the day, lines are lines, the script is a script, but you can't just make it your script because you're not the one reading it. You're the one writing it, but it's very much that the actor has to relate and kind of really be free about what he's saying. So when I realized that in the first one, so when I did the second one, I very much wrote bullet points. Like these are the points that need to be said. Like this is what I want to discuss with you, and these were with my friends. But to me, it didn't really matter because at the one thing that I try to say and convey is that these are your lines, and what you see fit should fit the narrative, but it's your lines at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
I've worked with a couple of directors. Again, this is in theater that, and I'll never forget the quote. She said, "Oh, I finally get to boss Greg around," and I thought, well, that's not really that's not what a director like does. Bring your
Yeah.
vision, and um, we're going to lean on you because we're not able to see it. We're on stage. Is it working? Is it playing? Um, but yeah, allow the actor to bring what he or she has to it because that's all we've got.
Yeah.
Are my cumulative life experiences and how I see things through this character. Maybe it plays, maybe it doesn't. Rehearsal to me is just one big playground anyway. It's just one big sandbox. Get in there and play, figure it out, set some stuff, and then keep what works and throw out what doesn't. And I would think a good director needs to let actors act. Let them
Right.
do what they're there to do. Otherwise, what are we doing? Go do
Right.
puppet shows.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
really appreciated that freedom from him. I think that helped me greatly, and if it played, then it worked.
And that's one thing that you can only get, not only get, not necessarily, but you find that being consistent with independent films or with small groups making theater because there's not a big boss on top of him. There's a bigger boss, and on top of him, there's a bigger boss, and all of them have notes, and all of them have edits, and all of them have visions. When you have it independently, so for example, Agent Emes, or for example, a small theater in Pittsburgh, where there's one director and he has a lot of creative control, but in a way that there's one consistent vision, and it's up to everyone not to appease to that vision necessarily, but be part of creating a collaborative puzzle, like
Mm-hmm.
making a puzzle into making one picture. That's basically the best way to describe it. Is everyone has a piece and it makes one picture that the director kind of directs to make sure it comes together.
Sure. And if you're a known entity, you may be in that role because the director knows what you can bring to it. So,
Right.
you sort of work from that point.
I think so we are running out of time. Would you do Agent Emes if, let's say, label comes up out of the blue and says, "Hey, I got a budget to do one more, like bring the gang back"? Would you do it? And if so, what would you think Clarence would do, or just besides with just being Clarence, or what would you like to see Clarence do, or anything?
Well, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't we do it? Sure. Clarence with a walker, but yeah, we could do it. Sure. Why not? We could maybe mine some comedy from that.
Did you like the aspect of Clarence just running around and jumping around, or was it kind of hard for you?
No, that was fine. That was fine. That was fine. Yeah, but that would present him and his goofy energy well. He had no direction, as a
Right.
character written. So it was the fact that he had no direction physically. That's fine. That actually worked. Yeah, I think it would be fun to do. Why not? Why not? I don't recall anything bad about the production or the people or anything like that. It was not a bad experience. So,
Yeah.
you don't find good experiences as often as you'd like. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
be fun. Where would Clarence be now? Oh, God only knows. God only knows. Where would
Yeah.
Clarence be now? Who knows? Who knows?
I could imagine like one of those things where like the franchise comes back for many years and they discover the evil palace, and you walk in and you just see Clarence uh, like sweeping up the room or something like, and you're like, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm Clarence. I've been here forever." You know what I mean?
This is what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think there's been much growth, in
Yeah,
Clarence, even though
exactly.
it's been for 15 years. Yeah, I could see that as well. Where's he going?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Oh no, that would be fun. That would be fun.
All right, Greg, thank you so much for joining us. And
No problem.
this was really a great conversation and a very unique one at like for sure. So thank you very, very much for joining us.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. See you around.
Hey, we'll see you. Peace.
This is a great episode. I had a lot of fun, and it was really it was a great time to talk with Greg. It was funny and it was insightful, and it was very cool to see a unique actor from that series, and instead of just being except for those who were main actors in that series, but then you actually get like the comic relief actor to say stuff and also be just on the page with you when it comes to entertainment and things about scripts and directors and filmmaking. And it was such a good conversation to have with him, and I hope to have him back. All right, guys, that's it for today. Please tune in every Thursday for another episode of the PBS Podcast, and please also share these clips. These are really good interviews, and I can't wait for people out there in the world to see it, so please share them out. There's a lot of interviews lined up, and it is amazing, so stay tuned for those interviews. I'll see you next time.